Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the dust has settled. We are post spring practice, post spring transfer portal. I think our opinions regarding the ACC in 2025 probably remain the same, right? We had this exact same conversation, I believe, all the way back in February. That was you look at the ACC going into 2025. I think there are clear two top teams in the conference, Clemson, Miami. Then you look at their schedules. They don't play each other in 2025. You feel like Miami and Clemson are on a crash course for that ACC championship game. Now, the first part of the conversation is, hey, who's your pick to win the ACC in 2025? The second part of this conversation is, Dill, you got to talk about a few other teams that are lingering, and kind of like snakes in the grass. We saw this last year with SMU. All anybody wanted to talk about, heck, all we talked about, Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, who was going to win the ACC championship. SMU came out of nowhere. Louisville played some very good football. There are a few teams that I kind of feel that way going into 2025, but you look at the two by far best two rosters in this conference, it's Clemson and Miami. Fired up to get into it. Before we do it, as always, Clemson fans, Miami fans, look, the best part about doing this in May is we are going to all go to war in the comment section. We are months before we even kick off the college football season. We are months before we might even see this game being played. But I know y'all are going to let it fly. Please do. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. It's been a blast this offseason. Like talking both of these teams in spring practice, in the transfer portal. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And heck, even if y'all got some dark horses in the ACC, some teams that you're kind of sneaky worried about, let it fly in the comment section as well. Dill, how I think we'll start this conversation, I'm gonna let it rip, put you on the spot here. Clemson, Miami are kind of two picks to win the ACC. Sitting here in early May, who are you taking to win it all in December?
My lean is Clemson just because I don't feel like you have a ton of questions. Like Clemson, I
And no
think at
questions.
almost every level of this
Yeah.
team, you kind of know what you have back. They're returning a lot of production. They have that elite star power, especially on that defensive side of the ball and at the pass catcher spot that they just haven't had in a while. And then you look at Miami, like I personally, like we talked about the transfer portal and how they'd use it in the spring, like wide receiver and defensive line, especially on the interior, I feel like came up a lot. Miami's got enough talent to me, and they had enough talent
Oh
heading
yeah.
in the spring in both those rooms to be really good units. But you do have like, are you going to hit with an Artavius Jones? Is Justin Scott going to take that step and be a dominant player? Are you going to get enough from JoJo Trader or Malachi Tony or that type of guy to be really good in those spots? And those are two really important spots if you want to
The
win a lot of games. I just look that to me is why I lean Clemson because there's a lot more definition in what Clemson's going to be.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that take. I think the best way to sum it up for me is like kind of just know what Clemson's going to be. And now is it going to be good? You know it can be good enough to win the ACC championship. You know it can be good enough to win a national championship. Is it? Then I look at Miami and like you said, all right, there are maybe a little bit more question marks, but there is some big time upside to this football team in 2025 if it all comes together. Now,
And one
I,
thing you love is that Miami has an offensive line that's championship level. I think
yes,
they're top three in
agree
the
with that.
sport. They've been that way under
Yeah,
Mario Cristobal because
they
that
have.
is the one thing that's
Yeah,
to me been holding Clemson back is when they play the big dogs, their offensive line hasn't been playing good enough. And like, especially when it comes to running the ball, like you look at
yeah.
the way they played Georgia, the way they played Texas. Cade was awesome against Texas. He was doing all he could in that game. It's really hard to play good football when you can't run the ball at all. And when they played big time teams, they have been struggling for the past few years. So that to me, they're bringing the whole unit back for the most part. Is that unit under Matt Luke going to take the step to be a championship level unit? Because that's the one thing Miami certainly has that you may have some questions about some other parts of that team, but Clemson's got to make that happen.
Yeah, I feel like everybody wants to talk about Carson Beck related to Miami. It's like the reason to believe in this Miami Hurricanes team. I'm a Carson Beck believer. The reason to believe in them is what they can do on the offensive line, specifically running the football. I want to focus in on Clemson because we're gonna get into like, Dill. Here's my sheet for this episode. It's a laundry list of things I love about Clemson going into 2025. And I got one question, and that is, does the offensive line hold them back against elite opponents? Because it's kind of sneaky problem for Clemson, because you look at their overall rushing production from last year and say, hey, they ran the football okay. Well, they ran the football pretty dang well against teams like Wake Forest. All right, when you play a team like Georgia, or you play a team like Texas in the college football playoffs, and I know they had some running back issues. They even look at South Carolina, even when they had Phil Maffa healthy. This offensive line struggled to impose their will against some really good defensive fronts. That's the only thing that's holding them back. Now, I'll give you a 30-second elevator pitch. You can go more than 30 seconds if you want, but I know you like to ramble. Clemson buying stock in them. Like, what's the reason to believe in this football team going into 2025?
Elite talent in very important spots. Like their interior defensive line to me might be the best in the country. You look at Peter Wood, DeMonte Capehart. I think it's a deep unit. I like some of the young guys they have coming up. And then obviously TJ Parker on the edge. He's a monster. So you got two arguably top 5 players on that defensive line.
Yeah.
DeMonte Capehart to me is criminally underrated. I don't know if people have watched his game. He's a monster to me. So I look, they're elite there, and they finally have elite pass catchers and playmakers on the edge. So I think that combination, along with just Tom Allen coming in, I really like kind of where they could be, because that defense severely underperformed last year.
Here's the most important thing for me, and I agree. Tom Allen, and like, can Tom Allen maximize this defense? Like, Clemson made me look like a freaking fool last year. I did last year at this time. I said Clemson, I think, has top 5 defense in the country. I looked like an idiot. On paper, it could have been a top 5 defense. It was just really just never came together. Mismanaged by Wes Goodwin. Can Tom Allen maximize it immediately is the question, right? You sometimes see these defensive coordinators struggle to get it going immediately. Can Tom Allen do that for Clemson? On offense, and this is largely why I love Clemson this year, it's so much continuity. Like, you look at Miami, there's a lot of red and a lot of blue. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but you then have question marks about it all coming together immediately. Where you look at Clemson, there ain't a lot of color on this list. A lot of this team that made the college football playoffs last year is coming back in 2025. That used to not matter all that much, like 5-10 years ago. Now I think it matters. Like, you look at the teams that have won national championships, they use the portal, but it's normally just like continuity and returning production. That Ohio State team, yes, they made some really good portal additions, right? Will Howard or Quinshaw Judkins or Caleb Downs, but most of that team was that team that we saw in 2023 that was good. They decided to run it back. That's the vibe I get from Clemson. You return your quarterback. You go year 3 with your offensive coordinator, elite pass catchers on the outside who are catching footballs from Cade Klubnik last year, and then you return everybody on the offensive line too. The continuity, along with the talent, along with the NFL draft picks, that's what stands out to me about Clemson. Let's move over to Miami here. Dill, if you had to say one big thing that will probably hold or could hold Miami back in 2025, what's your answer to that?
Probably how quickly that defense, especially in the back end, can come together. Because I look at you talked about a lot of red. There's a lot of red in that secondary, and that was a failure by Miami last year. What they did developing, identifying talent in that secondary, just really, really weak. And I will say you have a lot of guys who've played a lot, which you certainly like even in Ethan O'Connor, young player, but he's played a fair amount of football, obviously, in his young career. Poiser, Jacoby Thomas played a lot. Xavier Lucas played a little bit last year, but hyper talented. So I think you get a good mix of like real high end talent, but also guys who have played a lot. But again, that still needs to come together, especially in a very zone heavy scheme that does require some communication, some being on the same page in the way that they're going to try to run it with their new DC.
So that is certainly a concern, 100%. I think my other concern is like, all right, do you have those kind of pass catchers that in the big moments can get it done against really good competition? Like, who's your winner when you're playing Clemson and it's 3rd and 6, it's a 1-score game in the 3rd or 4th quarter? Who's your guy that's winning? Like, last year was Xavier Restrepo and Cam. Well, obviously Cam Ward, but last year was Xavier Restrepo. Who's that true wide receiver one? I like the talent in the room, whether it's young, whether it's portal talent. Who's going to emerge as that wide receiver one? Because then you look at Clemson and say they have a couple of those guys who can be those winners against elite talent on the outside. You're not sure who it's going to be from Miami.
See,
Now,
I think it's enough talent in the room, and frankly, I think what's going to be your answer is being able to put the ball on the ground and run it really effectively. I
yes,
think that's something yeah, I know you want good wide receivers, but that's a team that's built themselves up from the inside
yeah,
out. I mean,
yeah,
that's a team that I think when they're in big games this year,
yeah,
it might look a little different than what it did under Cam Ward,
yeah.
because Cam Ward, they were putting the ball in the air a lot, but that's make no mistake, when Miami wants to run the ball, they were pretty much able to run the ball against whoever they wanted.
Yeah, they just didn't do it much. That's fair. It's like, all right, who's going to be your winner in 3rd and 7? But we ain't going to be in 3rd and 7. We're going to be in 3rd and 2, and we going to be running that damn rock with Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle. That's probably fair. Here's the biggest thing for Miami. Okay, I know, at least this is my opinion. I know Miami is going to be a good team next year in 2025. Can they? How do they become elite? How do they beat Clemson? How do they? If you beat Clemson in the ACC championship game, you're making a run in the college football playoffs, or at least have the potential to. How good is the defensive line going to be? Specifically, the young talent. Like, does Ruben Bain get back to that level going into year 3? What's Armando Blunt look like in year 2? What's Justin Scott look like in year 2? What's Hayden Lowe look like as a true freshman? There's so much upside on this defensive line. You don't totally know what it's going to look like because a lot of these guys are young, but a lot of these guys are super talented. And you look at every elite college football team across the country, they'll look different in a lot of different ways. You know, we saw Michigan win a championship a different way than Ohio State. They both had elite defensive lines. Can Miami's not just be good? Can it be great in 2025? Is probably the question where it's like, are they 9-3? Are they 11-1 college football playoff dangerous team? Is probably where it lies.
Now,
Dill,
one thing I feel like we're all Akeem Mesidor to me, the more I
very
watch
good.
games from
Very
last
good.
year, the more I'm
Yes.
like, oh, this is a dominant football player. I
Yeah.
think getting him back was huge for this Miami team. You talk about again, you're certainly hoping Ruben Bain can be what he was as a freshman or
Yep.
be something take that type of step because he was a
Yep.
monster as a freshman. Justin Scott is probably the guy on the inside that you really are hitching your wagon to
Yeah.
be the force. But Akeem Mesidor, he'll never get the attention that the other guys get because he's
Agreed.
kind of slow start to his career a little bit, and I feel like people forgot about him. But he is a massively disruptive
Yes.
force on that Miami
Agreed.
line.
The reason I didn't list Akeem Mesidor is I don't know if we're going to see a massive step from him because I think he's going into year 5. He's
Yeah, but
just been super
he's
solid.
got some
Yeah.
definitive, yeah, he's a dude out there. And I
Yeah.
don't think anyone talks about him because there are more fun names, if you
Yes.
will, but he's a really good player.
And the Miami fans, y'all probably know I'm guilty of that. We've talked a lot of Jay Scott, we've talked a lot about Blunt. Haven't talked a ton about what Akeem Mesidor is. All right, Dill. I'll say it too, and I'm gonna get some heat from the Miami Hurricane fans, but I'm going to take Clemson too. And it's because of the continuity. And when it's those big moments, those big games, I want a team that's played together for a very long time. And I also I think Miami fans probably agree with this point too. You got to have more confidence in Dabo Swinney right now to win these kind of games than Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal has to show us he can win those games consistently. Here's the one thing I like, and now then we'll get into our dark horses, promise. I know I'm rambling a little bit here. Carson Beck's been in those moments. Miami hasn't had a quarterback that's been, even Cam Ward. And Cam Ward was awesome. This ain't no knock on Cam Ward, but coming from Washington State, he was never in those college football playoff SEC championship caliber moments. Carson Beck has been in those moments, has been successful in those moments. Does that rub off on this Miami Hurricanes team? Because the one thing that really prevents you from just buying a ton of stock in Miami is we just haven't seen them come through in the big moments. Does Carson Beck bring that to Miami in 2025? Dark horse, Dale. Dark horse. Miami and Clemson are the clear favorites. If you were to take some pizza money and throw it on a team to win an ACC championship, or just throw it on a team where it's we're sitting here in November and saying they legit, kind of like how we were talking about SMU. What team you looking at?
I think it's got to be Georgia Tech. And some
Yes,
of the
has to be.
turnover concerns me a little bit in terms of what
Yes.
they're doing. But their offensive line, they're returning a good chunk of that.
Yep.
Defense line is probably my big question, but I think that's a team that they can score. I love the way that scheme's set up. I think Rutherford back. I think adding Eric Rivers, they're still going to be a really good offense. Jamal Haynes is an extraordinarily slept on running back.
And You didn't even
excellent.
mention Haynes King, who I think you have to put as one of the best quarterbacks in this conference, arguably. And now I'm doing this off the top of my head. Like, is he number 3 behind the 2 quarterbacks we're
Just
talking about right
the
now?
way that what they've done with him in terms of putting him in situations
Yeah,
to be really successful and
yeah,
use his athleticism as kind of the base of what they're doing,
yep,
and then allow him to work off of that,
yep,
it's been really, really effective. So I look this Georgia Tech team now. Again, their defense is probably what's going to concern me the
yes.
most. I know that offense is going to be pretty effective. Kyle Efford, to me, really, really good player in that middle. What do they have around him is kind of what I wonder
Mine's the
because their
defensive
defensive
line.
line a little bit thin. You
And yeah, no, it's not good. At least on paper. Like you lose
oh, it's not.
Romello Height to Texas Tech. Zeke Biggers goes to the NFL. Like those were kind of the guys for Georgia Tech, and it wasn't like it was a great unit last year either. And so it's
Like
a good
I like
offense.
some of the guys they brought in on the edge. I think AJ Hoffler's a really good player. I
Yeah,
Braden Maley was really productive at Mercer, so you kind of wonder what you're going to get from him.
yeah, but we're betting
I'm
on
very
Mercer,
concerned
kid.
about the interior. The interior
Yeah.
defensive line just
Now
I don't
here's the
know.
other thing you love about Georgia Tech. They out of the top 5 teams in the ACC according to odds to win the conference, they play one of them. That's Clemson, I believe. They don't play SMU. They don't play Miami. They don't play Louisville. And so it's like that this team could be very, very good. We could be talking about them having a shot at getting in the ACC championship game because outside of Clemson, they play a very light ACC schedule. My pick is Louisville, and it starts with Coach Brom. Like Coach Brom is awesome. I think he's one of the best. That team was pretty damn. I mean, you look at that Louisville team last year; they went 9-4. They beat Clemson on the road and beat the brakes off of Clemson too. One score loss to Notre Dame, one score loss to SMU, one score loss to Miami. All 3 of those games could have gone a different way. Like we watched all 3 of them. And so it's like that's not like a one score loss where they put a garbage time touchdown in late in the 4th quarter, made it look pretty. That they were legitimately hanging with all of those teams. The one other thing they lost to Stanford, I can't really defend that one. But outside of that, like this team was really good last year. You trust Coach Brom, especially with Miller Moss at quarterback. I think that's a dynamite fit for Coach Brom and what he wants to do on offense. My concern here, Dill, is that last year and when Coach Brom first took over, I thought they did a really good job in the portal. Like some real like potential difference makers. I didn't think they did that this year. Like they grabbed a lot of names in the portal. There weren't a ton of guys where like, okay, that's a high level ACC caliber player.
Well,
Are
I
they
thought they
complete?
did on the offensive side. I thought some of their
Ooh,
offensive line pickups are pretty good. I still
yeah,
think Kari Collins can play a little bit, but I'm concerned. Like their defense, you're right. They just didn't add guys who are huge difference makers,
yeah.
and they're losing some really good play. Like Ashton Gelati was
He was
really good for them.
elite.
They're losing some
Yeah.
guys who I thought Dawson was quite good for them. He looks like he'll be quite good for Notre Dame. So they're losing a fair amount of guys, and you said it. Like Clev Lubin's the only guy I look at like really, really excites me on the defensive transfer portal market. So he might be a guy who again can replace some of that. Now he's got to take the jump from Coastal, but he's a guy I'm very excited to see. And if he's really good on the edge and can be really disruptive and create negative plays, I think Louisville's going to score a lot. I think Louisville could be pretty decent.
Yeah, it's just like does their defense keep them in games well enough is probably the question. They got Colin Lacey back. He took a red shirt last year. He's supposed to be like a difference maker for them. Played in 4 games, decided to red shirt, was going to hit. He's back at Louisville with Chris
The
Bell.
wideout crew's pretty good,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
because Chris Bell, I'm a pretty big fan of. So I look that offense, especially with those 2
should be
running guys,
good.
can really light the world
Oh
on
yeah, that
fire.
was so dumb. How am I going to talk about Louisville without talking about the running? That is these
So
running
I
backs for
think the
Louisville.
offense, I think they're going to score again. They've been scoring under Jeff Brown, but you said it like when you don't really bring in like 4 to 5 difference makers on defense and you don't recruit at all in Louisville's, that's been something surprising in Jeff Brown's tenure is that he hasn't
Yeah,
been able to like recruit at all.
he doesn't even try, Dill. He didn't even try. He's just
And
like, we're
that's
going
why
to
it's
portal.
tough. You got to bring in better players out of the portal if you're going
Yeah,
to recruit the way he's recruiting,
yeah.
especially on the defensive side of the
Like
ball.
I remember we had this conversation when he just took over. It's like, all right, is he gonna start tapping into the recruiting trail? I was like, well, listen, give him some time, let him kind of retool his roster in the portal. He'll get going. It's like I don't even know if they're even interested in it. Which look, maybe that's the recipe for Louisville to be successful. I don't know. Like kind of doing the Ole Miss way. I don't. We'll see. All right, we'll close it there. Georgia Tech, Louisville, the teams to watch out for. Probably got to throw SMU with Kevin Jennings and Rhett Lashley in that conversation as well. And then there's a drop off, in my opinion. Like Florida State's, I think, next on the list in terms of odds. They got to show me some life before they're even getting in this conversation right now. All right, boys are both on Clemson. The Canes fans are going to be pissed at the boys, and I get it. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.